we're going to jump in, and DaShaun is going to kick us off with, actually not kick us off, he's actually going to talk to us about streamlining your delivery pipelines with Spring Modulith. I had to look at that a few times as I was typing it to make sure I wasn't misspelling, thinking it was monolith by default. So Modulith, I like it.
Like we're looking at just a slightly different way.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I like a little play on words. Cool. Well, with that, I'm going to get this, if you want to put that on you.
Yeah, and I like this setup.
I will give you this
Plug.
out
Fantastic.
of the way.
We'll see. We'll see. What I'm just going to sit. I can sit like this, right? We're relaxed.
Sure.
We're hanging out. I do this a bit. So I'll do my intro. And I like having things in production, right? So I put my intro out on my website too. Today's day 863 in this job. Before that, I worked at Redis, Data. Before that, I was a seller. I was on the sell side at Pivotal/VMware. And before that, I had a little startup downtown, MedZero, VP of Engineering. So I understand the dollars and cents of the startup. So this is where my scar tissue comes from. This is why I'm passionate about this talk. Before that, I worked at Garmin, 6 years. You can find me at the places. I do spring office hours. I like to just make myself available. So we do a live video stream on all the places every Monday. And yeah, it is fun. It's the thing that I wish I had when I was a Java developer, sitting in the office. That's me. Streamline your delivery pipelines. Hi. Come on in. What's your name? Santos. Very nice to meet you. I'm DaShaun. You're just in time. There's pizza and soda still. Yeah, help yourself. You're not going to miss much. I'm just chit-chat. I have scar tissue, right, from years past. And I work with a lot of customers, orgs all over the globe because I work at Broadcom. Oh, whoops. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to do that again. I asked the AI, right? I got to say AI 5 times for it to be a talk, right? I asked the AI, like, I had this picture in my head of a lot of organizations. We were talking about mainframe. This is my, the distributed system on the mainframe, microservices being deployed to mainframes. And it can, even on a mainframe, it can be a mess. Death Star, right? The microservice Death Star. Distributed systems are tough. This is just me. Like, these are pictures that are in my head. There's problems with distributed systems. I like to say having the right tools in your tool belt and knowing when to use them, that's kind of a big part of it, right? Just because you know how to do one thing, you have a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. But the more tools you put in your tool belt, the better you get, right? I don't know if you've ever tried to build a fence or anything, but build a fence. Power tools, the guy that has the power tools, build a fence faster than the guy that's doing the hammer and saw. Having the right tools is important. So, these are questions that I get asked all the time from all levels of organizations. Even the juniors, right? The guys that are just 1 year out of school, they think they know more than their peers. Like, how do I do that? How do I get my team to write better code? How do I get my team to write more like me? How do I do that? These are questions that I get. I hear a lot. And they're always asking, like, hey, what are those best practices? I get it. This is the one that is the most frustrating. It's this startup mentality. I think startups are an important part of what we do. And I love helping out small orgs. So I work with mostly like the Global 2000 orgs, but I like working with smaller companies. I like to, there's a lot that can be done. And this is just a painful thing. Yeah, we'll work on our MVP as soon as we get all of our pipelines done. We got our dev environment done. We got our test environment done. We got stage done. We're working on prod right now. As soon as we get all of this infrastructure done, then we'll start working on our MVP. We got to have someplace to run it, right? Here's the thing. If you hear nothing else, if you've got a friend that's in a startup, if you're thinking of doing a startup, listen to me now, hear me later. Your laptop is just fine. Get it working on your laptop. You're going to do your first 1,000 demos from your laptop anyways. Just get it working on your laptop. Because when you need to make changes, you need to iterate. It's not just, if you're doing the infrastructure thing first, you're not just changing your application. You have to change all the things in the infrastructure as well. Get it working on your laptop, okay? The most important measure for software today is maintainability. And this is from T0 until you're dead, right? Survival's not mandatory, right? You've heard that before. Your business, there's nothing requiring your business to survive. Being able to maintain, being able to keep things going, keep things upgraded is an important part. This is what I face a lot. This, for me, is my number one thing. Like, how easy is it to maintain? One of my good friends, former colleague, one of the things he used to always say was like, this maturity, you don't know really anything in software unless you've been at some place long enough to see the outcomes of what you did. You say, oh, I learned Kubernetes and I took Kubernetes to production. If you didn't stick around and have to do 2 or 3 upgrades of Kubernetes, if you didn't stick around long enough to see it, succeed or scale or fail, you really didn't do anything. So this is another kind of aspect of this. You got to be around long enough to understand really what's going on. And I'm saying start with guardrails. Start with a smaller set. Don't put everything on the menu. Start with a smaller menu. The right answer changes over time. We've all heard it depends, right? Should I use this or that? It depends. The right answer changes over time. The right answer today, your startup, is on your laptop for anybody that's listening and doing a startup. But that's going to change over time, hopefully. Right? Either you're going to scale and you're going to have a customer that says, yeah, we want to stand things up. If it's running on your laptop, it's going to be easy to put in the cloud for your customer. Easier. Right? But if you've built out a bunch of infrastructure for your demo and then you've got to migrate over to a customer, because of course your customer is going to say, well, we want it in 3 different regions. We have these other things. Put the guardrails in place. I've also been in the position where onboarding is important. When you scale up from 2 engineers or 3 engineers, and then, you get the gorilla, right? Large Fortune 10 company comes and says, hey, we like your product, Jeremy, and we're ready to go. Can you have us up and running in all 18 regions across the globe by the end of this quarter? Jeremy says, yeah, I just got to hire a few people. And if your onboarding is straight, if onboarding is easy, that's going to make a difference. That time. And that, for all these conversations, there's that time. T0, T infinity. I'm going to win or not. Let's figure it out. Patching is important, right? The way that I live my life right now, N-1 is too bad. Like, even N-1, I'm like, what are you doing? Whether you're paying for the software or not, why would you ever be on it? Does anybody have a good reason why you should be on N-1? Can anybody think of a good one? No. So why do we let our friends do that? Don't let your friends be on N-1 of anything. Linux, right? We should all be on Ubuntu Linux now, or that's the new Kubernetes version, isn't it? 1.30 is Ubuntu. Kubernetes, that's what it is. Kubernetes. Like, get there as soon as you can. Java 17 is like, it's good, but Java 22's been out for weeks. Java 17 is ancient, yet we still have companies that are running Java 4, 5 in production on the mainframe. Like, what? Patch, get up, N-0. N-0, I want that N-0 life. Actually, I'm not going to embarrass myself because I have automation in my house, in my home lab. I have hundreds of computers. But let's do this. Let's take a look, and let's see if, I'm kind of hesitant because this is my work laptop. If I do a brew update in my house, all my computers at least patch things all the time. I'm hoping that this shows 0, but something could have happened in the 2 hours that I've been here. I'm saying, hey, just brew update. Brew update, brew upgrade. There's one. But this is not like that big of a deal. If there was a CVE, and I don't care, if there was a CVE in that thing, I want it patched. So at a minimum, every computer in my house, I'm doing this every single day. When I'm done doing it, reboot it. Patch it, reboot it. So if a bad guy's sitting there, good luck. You got 24 hours to figure it out, at most, if I have an unpatched CVE. And I'm saying do the same thing in your data center. This is how I live. This is how I want to live my life. I digress. Documenting. This is, I think, where I really cross the lines. I come from a software engineer background, but I started my own hosting company in 1995. I have DaShaun.com. I've had it since 1995. I started with a shared server somewhere in New Jersey, and then kind of grew. I went through the whole like Server Beach and all the other places, DigitalOcean kind of thing, where you could go and rent servers. And then containerization came around, and I was like, oh, VMs, this is great. So I've been like through all of these technology dances over the years, but the documentation was lacking for me. I'll be honest, I'm transparent. When I realized the importance of documentation, my whole life changed. And today, in 2024, I am confident that documentation has never been more important because of, anyone want to guess? Because of AI. Because every document that's out there, there's some bot, some GPT model that's being trained on all of the publicly available documentation. So your documentation is important, more important than ever. You don't want to have a bug in your documentation when it's being consumed by all the bots. Testing, this is a Java thing. Like, as a developer, I don't want to have to stand up all the things when I'm only working on this one little thing. So it's nice to be able to like slice your testing up. That's all that is. These are important things. Getting to production. Software supply chains. And this is where this is kind of the point of the talk here today. If we've got it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we got a 7-person startup. We're all engineers. We can all code, and we're trying to get Jeremy's product out in the world. We're trying to get to MVP. By default, for me, for a long time, by default is, hey, you're going to do the user service, you're going to do the order service, you're going to do the account service, you're going to do the secret part, the secret service, and we're going to go. And you're just going to go on your own path, and we'll create a bunch of pipelines, and we'll build something, we'll probably deploy it to Kubernetes, and we'll have a bunch of repositories for a bunch of different code, and we won't talk to each other, and we'll deploy. And then when the user service needs to talk to the account service, what's it going to do? We're going to have to write some kind of client, whether it's gRPC or HTTP or something. Like, we can't just do, this is kind of the default. And I'm here to tell you there's a better way. There's all these things. The number of artifacts that we're building, right? Even in the project that I'll show you today, I was like, man, this is just ridiculous. I'm over it. I'm over it. Distributed systems, high availability. Like, you got to stay up. Like, once we've got to MVP, once we are out the door, you got to stay up, right? So moving from that laptop out to MVP, let's do it. Is anybody, are these familiar, the fallacies of distributed systems? I put this in there because there's a lot of just things that can go wrong, right? From one computer to the other. Sometimes we forget. So there's a little tool, Spring CLI. I'm going to use it. It's cool. Here's the thing, Spring Project List. This is where I get into the guardrails. I've got strong opinions here. If you come and work for me, you come and work for my company, I don't have cloud money. I don't have cloud money. I've got a laptop. I've got Raspberry Pi money. I got Raspberry Pis. I have 100 of them. That's where my workloads go. And I have my laptop. So what I've done today is I'm gonna shift over here a little bit. Let's make it visible. This is K9s. Everybody's seen this? This is a look at the pods that are running on my Kubernetes. These are the ones that are up and running. So I can have hundreds of these if they are scaled to 0. And that's what I do. This is my default because, like I said, I want to run on Raspberry Pis. Start on my laptop. When I need to expand, I'll go to Raspberry Pis. But in here, there's this DaShaun-IO. And I don't think that I have it configured the right way. So let's go take a look. I'm going to show you some of the patterns that I do. So I'll start here. Actually, I'll start here. And I brought up Spring CLI. Let's go into here. If you want to ride the path of production, that's my supported path of production to my Raspberry Pis, you have to follow some rules. And those rules are all defined in a repository. And I like to have things in Git. We're going to go to DaShaun-Project Catalog. This is where we're going to start. How do you onboard somebody? How do you teach somebody to, hey, go make a REST service, a RESTful API? Does that make sense to everybody? Everybody understands RESTful API, the get, put, post kind of stuff? That makes sense, yeah? How do you onboard somebody? Let's say that's your pattern that's supported. How do you onboard somebody to that? Did you read a book or you train them? What do you do? Any ideas? How did you write your first?
Use the repo, read the README.
Yep, find a repo, read the README, right? But which repo did you look at? Well, I know how it worked for me. I'm going to look over Jeremy's shoulder. I'm like, hey, what you working on? Oh, there's your GitHub. Okay, there's Jeremy's GitHub repo. I'm going to look at Jeremy's, and if it worked for him, I'll copy his repo. I'll copy what he's doing. Since he's been around for a long time, he knows what he's doing. I'm going to copy what he's done, and then I'll just change it to work for me. Anybody else ever done that? I think it's fairly common, right? These different patterns that happen. Oh, it worked over here. I'm just going to copy it and do it again. Make sense? I've been in situations where that it worked. Like when we were first going from the monolith to the microservice, that first microservice, it was written with Jersey. That first one that we pulled it off the monolith and we had a microservice. And then that was the example. Hey, so most of the traffic went to the monolith except for this one service was over here. And then, oh, that worked. We can scale that one differently. We can deliver that one. We don't have to run all the tests for the monolith. We can just run our tests for this microservice and we can deliver. So we can iterate on it faster. One of the benefits of microservices. This is great. And then somebody on the team that's now growing, they're like, oh, I'm just going to copy that service. And they copied the 1.0 version, but I'm working on 2.0. And 2.0's got more stuff in it. But now they've copied 1.0. How do I get them to get all my cool new stuff? How do you make that happen? How do you get those types of changes across your org, especially in a distributed system? Right? If we're all working on a separate repo, we're all having to maintain it and keep it on the latest version. This is a mess. And I'm saying this from scar tissue. Been in this spot. It's hard. And I know the values of microservices, they're great. It's fantastic. And I hope that we get to the point, I hope that Jeremy's company gets to the point where microservices is a great idea. Where you can scale across the globe differently, up and down, all over. That would be awesome. But today, maybe it's not the best idea. There's a lot that goes into it. So this is kind of my proposal with Spring CLI for whatever. It doesn't have to be Spring. Just this idea of it's not just repositories. These are reference implementations of the patterns that I support on my path to production. So I'm going to handle REST, Spring shells, like this is how we build our CLIs. We're going to use Llama 2 for our chat. That's going to be our model that we use. That's the one that I'm going to support in production. If you want to have your own AI in production on my Raspberry Pis, it's Llama 2. That's the model. Make sense? here's how we do persistence. Here's an example hello world. There's examples of the things, of the patterns that I support on my path to production. That's it. So if you come onto the team and you have a question on how do we do something, this is where you go. In Spring, I'll jump over here. I'm going to show this. Spring Project Catalog List. Out of the box, the Spring CLI, this is just one of the tools. It can be any tool. I'm a big fan of a CLI that I can put in the hand of a developer that's the same as what's running in production or what's running in my path to production. I just want the same. We had this big movement over years where, oh, push left, push left, push left. Right? Let the developers handle it. If the tools are different, you're just causing a problem. So, again, here's another one. I want the same CLI that's in my path to production in the hands of the developers. And if you're putting a tool in the hand of the developer, I want it in my CI/CD. You can't have just one. I should be able to do all my scanning. I should be able to do all my, iteration, generation, all the things. I should have those tools in my hands. So Spring CLI is just another tool. Think of any CLI, kubectl, right? If you're deploying to production, your developers should be able to do kubectl get pods, right? Now, they shouldn't have admin, right? They shouldn't have admin on your prod stuff, but they should understand Kubernetes. If that's what they're running in production, you want to have them with Kubernetes on their laptop. This is an important thing. This is one of those 12 factors. This environment parity. Still start on your laptop, right? You don't need Kubernetes in production yet. Start on your laptop. And you can run Kubernetes on your laptop. That works. So here I've got this catalog. This catalog just has the getting started guides for Spring. I've got this implementation where I can say, hey, Spring project catalog. I want to add one. So let's see what we got. Oh, no, I want to do help. What does it take? I want to add some of my best practices to this Spring. I'm using a new computer, so I should be able to say, hey, Spring project catalog, add. Let's see what that looks like. Spring project catalog, add, navigating the CLI as my API. So I've got some commands here. Let's do Spring project catalog, add, name. We're going to call it juice. URL, I have it over here. My project catalog is here. Hello. This is what I'm putting on the menu. Whoops. Is there anything else I need? No, we can just do that. So I'm saying, hey, developers, when you come in, here's your menu. So if I do Spring project list, and you're a developer, and you're trying to take something to production, boom, here you go. Here's a list of the best practices. Ignore the getting started guides. These are the best practices. You've got to follow these conventions to ride the ride to my path to production. That's easy enough, right? So cool. I put this in the hands of developers, and they're going off. And those developers, just like me, right? It's me. They went off and they created some repositories. They all fit. They're all doing the same thing, right? They're following the conventions. Let's go over here, GitHub. We're just telling a story. We've got some repositories that are made. There's pipelines. Remember, I run on Raspberry Pis. That's production for me. So these pipelines are building OCI images, Docker containers. They're running on Kubernetes. I showed you Kubernetes on my laptop. That's what's running in production. But Raspberry Pis and Mac, ARM64, M1, ARM64 architecture. Images. I can't run those same OCI images on your Dell as I do on my M1. It's different architecture. So my pipelines, and this holler out to Jeremy, these projects all build both images. They're building native images for ARM64 and native images for x86, and then they glue them together. so that when you ask for the hello world service, if you're on x86, you'll get an x86 OCI image. And if you're on Raspberry Pi, you'll get an ARM64 image. It just depends on which architecture you're on. So that I can evaluate every single penny that I'm spending. Because some of these workloads are going to run faster on ARM64. They're going to be more efficient. They're going to cost me less. I mean, Raspberry Pis. I don't have cloud money. So some of those workloads, I might need a different SLA. I might need different things. They might be more efficient, or I might be out of luck on ARM64. I might have to take it. I want you to be able to have it on your laptop. So I'm giving native images. These native images start up faster, less memory, lots of cool things. So it's still Java, but I've taken that Java and I've optimized it so it delivers native, statically linked binary for whatever platform I'm on. Does that make sense? That's a cool thing. But here's the problem. We're just in startup mode. And I've got, well, you can't see it there. Let's do it this way. I want you, I'm not going to do it. Somebody has a laptop or a phone. You have to go to intro.dashaun.io. I'm not going to do it. So we'll sit here awkwardly. We're going to go to intro.dashaun.io. And we're going to watch up here. Because it's not running. There's nothing running. But hopefully, if somebody goes to intro.dashaun.io, it should call out to the cloud, and it should hit this laptop, which is weird, but it's available to the cloud. There it is. So now, it's scaled up. Let's take a look at what happened. That was running. It was scaled to 0, and now it stood up. Oh, this is embarrassing. It's running 3.1.4. But this is up and running. So it's responded. And when it's done, it's going to go back to sleep. This is the whole like auto scaling, scale to 0. These are things that we can do today. And the response time, it's a couple of milliseconds, right? It might be even tens of milliseconds. But for me, in my budget, that's doable. Because I can have hundreds of those running on this laptop. They don't have to be running and eating up my resources, but they can be there ready to go, and I can have hundreds of them. That's nice. So I got a bunch of services, and I can do it this way. I can say can service list. Those are the services that are there. They're available, they're listening, they're public, but they're just scaled to 0. That's cool. But still, right now, there's 4 of them. We're just a little startup. We're a little startup. This is a mess already. Why? Hello doesn't know anything about the Llama 2. Intro doesn't know anything about the gateway. There's a lot of like wires that we have to cross. How do we get them to talk to each other? How do we verify that they can talk to each other? There's more concerns. Every service that I add, I'm adding more concerns. And usually it's not for the developer. It's for somebody else with a DevOps in their title or in their org, right? It's somebody else that's doing the pipelines, building the GitHub actions, scanning the OCI images. The developers are okay. Oh, yeah, I'll just make a new one. And I'll copy this other example, and I'll go. And nobody's going to get in my way, because I'll do a git commit, and I'll expect it to run in production. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. I mean, that's how New Relic makes all their money, right? New Relic charges per core?
No.
Sometimes? What? Oh, AWS metrics. That's a better way. They're still going to make more money this way than they would in what I'm about to show you. Here's the thing. This is the whole thing. Don't start with microservices. Spring Modulith. And this Spring Modulith is just a version of it, right? The concept is don't start with microservices. Monoliths are okay, especially when you're just starting. How many projects have you witnessed in your life that got a whole team and got all the resources and all the budget, and they did the microservice architecture, and they spent months doing we're building our pipelines, we're building our infrastructure, we're doing those things. And then it never made it to the light of day. Yeah, right? This is not uncommon. And it needs to stop, right? And we can help. If you care about your company, right? If you don't care about the company you're working for, yeah, pad your resume. But if you like your job, if you need your job, I'm going to show you another way. So there's 2 things here. This project this concept was designed to make it easier for us to start in a modular way. Start in a way where we can have this separation of concerns, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to go here. Actually, yeah, I'll go here. I'm going to go to DaShaun.io. This is how I set up my laptop. Everything's fun, right? I used to, on my work laptop, it was, home, workspace, home, work, right? I had all these things and all the projects were in it. It's not that way for me. It's in fun. I'm doing fun stuff. I showed you I have that project list. The better way to start, the way I want you to start, is thinking in a modular way. And I should have a monolith here. I don't want that one. I want this one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say Spring Project Catalog. I think I can remove that one. I want to remove the GS. So if I say Spring Project Catalog, remove. And then, again, I'm just looking at the API. We're all hanging out. -- name. Will that work? Boom. So now my Spring project list is just the stuff that's going to ride my ride to production. And I've got my module that has my conventions. Hopefully, there it is. So I'm going to say Spring boot new DevOps Modulith. And I want to start with this Modulith. So I got all the things. I'm updating those. I'm keeping those patched and with the latest and greatest conventions. So when I go into DevOps Modulith, I have a project. And this project has the guardrails in place. So this is the right way to start. And I'm showing an example. These projects that we're starting from, they are reference implementations. It's not something that you should check out, start a new project, and then go to production with. It's a reference implementation of what you should do. It's giving you an example with code and tests and documentation on how you should go to production. And it has all the things needed in order to go to production. So, some examples. Here, I've got some ASCII-Doc. This is how we document our code. And it's got these snippets in here. These snippets are generated. I said test-driven documentation is the other TDD. TDD is test-driven development, test-driven documentation. So these snippets are generated by my tests. I'm going to show you a little bit more. One of the things that I've done in the past, I'll be transparent, this is something that when I was in the sales position, I was handing to a customer. I was showing a customer how awesome my code was, and I got some cheat codes for you. And I'm going to show you what I handed them. It was all the patterns that I was using in the job before that. These are all the cool things that I was doing. It was using Spring Boot 1.5. I was using UUIDs for all of my indexes. I was building documentation from my tests. But this is what my code looked like. And this is a very Java thing, but it's called packaged by layer, right? You open up a project and you'll see like, oh, here's where we put our controllers, here's where we put our repositories, here's where we put our services, and you have these layers, but those layers then have to talk to each other across these boundaries. That's packaged by layer, which is weird. In some languages, it fits better than others. Well, I'm here to tell you, think of it a different way. If you come into a project, at the top at least, don't let it be packaged by layer. Packaged by feature is the better way to go. And here's why. If I've got a bunch of things, actually, let's go back over here. If I've got an inventory service and an order service and an inventory controller and an order controller, and they are packaged by layer, when it comes time to pull out inventory service, I've got to pull it from these multiple packages. Right? That ease has disappeared. But not only that, it's harder to look. Right? It's harder to figure out what's going on in a package by layer structure than it is in a package by feature. Hear me now, listen to me later, and I'm open to feedback, but this is where I'm at. And this was a change. I showed you what I used to do, and I'm telling you this, switching to package by feature is an easy adjustment to make. It's an easy adjustment. I'm going to tell you one more thing. So this package by feature, in Java, you get a little bit of extra things. The class visibility. I can put rules in place that says, hey, inventory, I can't pull in orders. Right? I want these things to go one way. I don't want to create circular dependencies. I don't want to create that microservice Death Star. So I can fix some things. But I can prevent some things from happening if I'm delivering this as a monolith. But if I start here with a modular monolith, this has an inventory and an order right now, and I can go that, but those are two modules. I can easily pull those out because I've got rules in place. Let's go look at those rules. And again, I'm just using Spring Modulith, but everything that's here can be done in any language with other frameworks. The tools exist. But I'm telling you that these guardrails should be in place for everything that you do. Spring Modulith makes it easy, just like Spring, right? Spring Modulith makes it easy to do this. And yeah, and it's slick. I can put these tests in place. I'm going to check this modular structure. I'm going to make sure that these features aren't reaching across the lines. They're not pulling in code. So that later, if I need to pull apart this modulith, I can. So I've got a little test here. I can run that test to verify these rules. These rules, this project comes with Arch Unit. So I did that. I made a modulith. We're good. A modular monolith. So I'm saying go to production, start your MVP with a monolith, but make it modular. That's it. Make it so that you can pull it apart later. But I want it to work on your laptop. I don't want you to have to worry about CI/CD and path of production, and it takes 5 minutes for you to get a change. Efficiently organize and evolve your software projects. Right? Our little team, our ragtag team of 7, there's no reason we should have 7 repositories when we haven't made MVP. We can work. This is the other cool piece. We can still work independently when I'm doing this development by feature. Right? You can be on inventory, you can be on order. But I showed you the Spring CLI already. If I'm doing this properly, if I've got some guardrails in place and patterns that we're going to support, right? Patterns that we've supported on version number 1 of product A, I can do some really interesting things here. I can say Spring boot add. This is interesting. There's a Maven archetype. There's tons of these archetypes that give you kind of like a starting point. But what the Maven archetype doesn't give you is this mix-in concept. Somebody told me, they said, oh, it's like a mix-in today. I can add any one of those other projects. So I've got inventory and order here. I'm going to add Llama to chat. I think that's what it's called. Oh, yeah, here we go. Llama to chat. I'm going to add chat to this project. Now here's what it's going to do. This is cool. There's a repository out there that has a different package structure, different stuff. Spring CLI is going to go out and it's going to pull that in, but it's going to do a little bit more. It's going to grab all the dependencies that it needs. It's going to grab the keys that it needs. All those properties, those configurations, it's going to pull those in, but then there's one more thing. It's going to refactor the package for me. So whatever I was in, that Llama 2 chat, it was io.dashaun.something, whatever it was. What I'm in now is dev DaShaun Modulith. So it's going to have to refactor that and put it into the right package into this project. And normally it doesn't take this long. But that's cool. I can do this for any one of those repositories. This is just a better way to go forward. Right? We decided we want to add a new feature, whatever it is. Of course, it's the AI chat. We can add it. I don't know why this is coming, but it's a demo. This path forward with these modular systems is the way to go. And later, I can pull them apart. The other piece here, I talked about how do these things communicate with each other. That's interesting. By default, I was making HTTP clients. Here it did the refactor. That's fantastic. I'm saying, Spring Modulith is saying, this is very Spring-centric. Spring has an application context, which includes an event bus. So in this monolith, I have an eventing system already. Spring Modulith kind of puts a wrapper and says, hey, these are module events that I can talk to back and forth. But when it's time to scale out, all I have to do is on one of these, I can say, hey, here, I've got transactional. So in this scope, I can say, hey, I'm sending a message. Here, this is what it's doing. I'm sending a message. I want to make sure that that message gets received and act. By putting that transactional on, I can do that. So it's not just a fire and forget. I've put this still using event-driven, but I've made it transactional just by adding that at transactional, which is kind of cool. On the other side, this event service says, hey, I'm going to listen for one of those events. And here in this system, we didn't have to deploy Rabbit. We didn't have to deploy JMS. We didn't have to do anything. We have one container right now. We have one application. Our modules are talking back and forth. We didn't have to write any clients. We have an event system. We have an event bus built in. And when it's time to expand, when it's time to pull the inventory service out or our chat bot, when it's time to pull that out on one of those messages, all that I need to do, externalize. I'm telling this Spring Module, I'm saying, hey, this is no longer going to ride on the application context event bus. It's going to ride on RabbitMQ or Kafka or JMS. So when I add that externalize, I've got to add another starter for whatever bus. RabbitMQ, for example. But that's it. Now I can pull that code out. I can run it as a microservice. I can deploy it separately. I've got things in place to verify that I'm following these rules. So I can still do that when I need to. I showed you the modular structure of verification. We just added our chat, right? We added Llama 2 chat here. And it's there. It's in its own module. I can go, I'm going to verify again. Verify those modules are still good. Run the test. Hopefully it's green. It's good. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to create documentation. We're all communicating. There's 7 of us on the team. We're all moving forward at our own pace. We're all creating our own documentation. So here's what we do. Spring Modulith. It gives me all the information. I can see what's happening in the rest of the system easily. And it's also generating UML. I didn't realize that every project in EMEA has UML that goes along with it. This is how different countries, especially when there's different languages, this is how they communicate. They start with UML. So this project, I did the documentation. I'm going to generate some UML over here. For all of those modules, I'm getting this out of the box. And for my ride, my path to production, I'm saying you start with Spring Modulith for all these reasons. We're going to start small. It's going to run on our laptop. I can still build a container. I can still make sure we're delivering good code. We're communicating over an event stream, event-driven. That's going to allow us to scale further faster. It reduces the amount of code that we need to write. We don't have to write clients, gRPC or HTTP or anything like that. All of this is kind of decided for me. The alternative, right? If I don't have guardrails in place, even if I'm just going to start .spring.io or wherever, right? .NET New, right? You still have decisions to make. If you've got a list of 800 archetypes on Maven or .NET New or the Angular, right? All these frameworks have this start here, here's a pattern, use it. But if you don't limit that, every developer that you onboard has a bunch of decisions to make. Well, do I use Gradle or do I use Maven? I made that decision for you, right? Do I use Java? I've made that decision for you. Hear me now, listen to me later. I was a big fan of Polyglot. But if I've got a little startup with 7 engineers, and I'm betting on these 7 engineers, every bit of training that I give to those 7 engineers, I want them all to get the benefit of it. I can bring in one lesson or 1 week or 1 month of training, and all 7 of my engineers get leveled up. But if I've got more than 1 language, I can't do that. Polyglot is great. But for us in our startup, if I'm betting big, we're betting on the same language so that if one of us gets married, wins the lottery, everybody else can fill in. These are lessons that I've learned. Spring Modulith leads me. It's another thing that I'm putting in my tool belt to help me go down this path, because I was just getting started. Even on start.spring.io, all of these other projects that I could choose from, I'm saying, we're going to start with this. We're going to start with everything's going to be REST. We're going to use event-driven. Here's what we're going to do. This is our project. This is how we're going to start. These are our best practices. Here's how we're going to go to production. We're going to decide those. We're not going to bring in something new that we just read about. We're going to decide those. We're going to know who owns them, who's going to support them. And the same with, I'm going to dig in a little bit more. The same with everything that I do. This is how I deliver to DaShaun Cloud, to my Raspberry Pis. You have a question in the back? Okay. Oh, 5 minutes, all right. You want to ride my ride? I've got a bucket. This is what's on the menu to ride my ride. These are the infrastructure pieces, tools that I support. Building, starting with a module, this is great. The other side of that coin, the thing it wasn't designed for, but I'm getting a lot of mileage out of, is customers. There's this pendulum that swings from the data center to the cloud, and then those workloads from the cloud back to the data center so I can save money. From the monolith to the microservice so we can scale and be agile. And then those microservices, that system that has 15 or 30 or 300 microservices, now it's feature complete and we're just patching. We're just doing the maintenance. There's 300 repositories that we have to patch and maintain. I can do this same thing. I can take those feature complete microservices and I can pull them in to a modular monolith, just like I showed you. I showed you some best practice examples, but I can do the exact same thing with those other repositories. And what I can do is I can start to see where the problems are with Spring Modulith, because I can go here and I can look at my docs and my UML, and I can see from the UML, how are these things related? How are they talking to? Oh, I don't have the extension. Let me install that real quick. It draws the UML. It draws it for me. It says that this module is dependent on that module, and that module is dependent on that one. And oh, here's your problem. You have a circular dependency, and you'll see it from the UML. So just adding these tiny little tools to your monolithic Spring app, for example, you can start to see where to unwind, where the problems are. And for that microservice, that feature complete microservice, there's 300 repositories, you can start to combine those into a modular monolith. You can still scale, but hey, that project doesn't have a team of 7 engineers anymore. It's not delivering features. And we can literally save millions of dollars by pulling it into a modular monolith. Yeah, defining and managing modules. Arch Unit is the framework that you can put different rules to make it so that, hey, we aren't going to cause these problems for ourselves. We can document it. We can see those interactions. There's actuators. So I can see exactly the health of each of those modules, just like it would in a microservice deployment. I can go to each of them and I can check their health, get their metrics. I can do that same thing in a modular monolith. This is what it is. It's an idea. It works. I'm a big fan of using this concept to start, and now I'm using it a lot more the other way around, where you got those microservices, that pendulum is swinging back for a lot of workloads. A lot of those workloads that are landing on the mainframe, that are sitting out in the cloud. And they needed to be microservices in order to go as fast as they did. But now they're feature complete. And I've got 5 of them specific in my head that were developed during COVID to meet the needs of COVID. They had to do it that way. And today, they should be pulled back. They're still running. They're still making the company money. But they don't need to be spending as much as they are on the maintenance, on the infrastructure, on all those things. They don't need to be spending that much. And this is what I do. This is a way to save millions. Yes, it can help. With your monolith and your microservices. This is me. I'm done. Woo! What do you think? Thank you. Thank you. Woo! That was good.
Great questions. We have a few. I wanted to give us a little bit of time for questions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, any questions you have?
I love my job. last time I presented on upgrading. And I showed the difference between upgrading from Spring Boot 2.6 running on Java 8 and getting up to, I think we're at Spring Boot 3.1 running on Java 17. And there's, just by upgrading, again, this is back to my N-0, just by upgrading, you can save a boatload of money. So there's one way of saving money. Our job, if we care about our company, we want to look at the big picture. We have a lot more vectors to think about today than we did in the past. And we can do these tiny little things that have massive impact. The worst thing that we can do is say that's the way that we've always done it. Any other questions? Yeah.
My concern with the generally in documentation, they're all looking like one project. You're bringing them all in, so they're all set folders, so they're all in one project.
Now the cool thing, what I didn't dig in, it actually pulled in the README and it pulled in the documentation as separate documentation. So even though I pulled in 3 projects, I got documentation for all 3. I had the dependencies for all of them, and they generated their own documentation.
Well, I'm a multi-module Maven person.
Okay?
So I have an alternative way of doing what modular can do.
Okay?
I'm concerned about having one project of massive size because I pulled in all of my microservices and I now have 150 folders
Mm-hmm.
on Java root.
Yep.
Just navigating that. And also every developer has to open that project and see everything just to work versus being able to isolate from modules and then use modules and visibility
Yep.
to do my guardrails.
So those guardrails, I talked about the slices. You could be working on inventory service, and you can just open up inventory service, and you can run your tests just for your module. So it's introduced another slice of modular tests is another way that you can do slices with Spring Modulith.
But that's still in a single folder. I mean, you got one folder at top.
Yep.
I didn't see any Maven submodules. That's one
Nope.
module.
Yeah, there's not.
So I can't get into a slice of inventory without opening that whole project in
Yep.
my Eclipse.
Yep, you can still, it would open up the whole project in Eclipse. But here's the other thing. If you've got 117 microservices, how else are you going to run that on your laptop?
I have 117 modules, Maven modules,
Yep.
links, and I think I can even run it. It's a monorepo, which is
Yep.
but I can have all of them there, and they're in 150 projects.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm using Palms to have my.
So if you want to run that application, you want to run all 170 modules on your laptop, what do you do?
I run the main app, which is linked to all 117, and they're all
So they all pulled into one JVM?
yes.
Okay, so the difficulty of pulling them all into one JVM, if you're going to have that running, if you're going to do any kind of inner loop development, you have the exact same. It's the exact same weight on your IDE of pulling in all those linked running versus having them all in one project as modules. The other piece, yep, but the debugging piece, yeah, the debugging is actually going to be easier, right? By having it as a one project versus linked projects.
Hold on a second. If you're assuming that I have to go through built jars for every project I jar. So all source is linked. So I actually see the entire source, and I can debug and walk through all projects. I'm also using Eclipse's JVM rather than the Java, so I can actually debug and save
Yep.
dynamically.
That's good.
So it's
Yep.
actually the same.
Yep.
I believe it's practically the same. There's
Practically.
a little extra overhead because of Maven, so I'll give you that.
Yep.
But I'm paying for that if I haven't had everything open at once.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if I'm doing it the other way, I can either have my 117 modules all open, working with source, or I can actually have a few people who's on inventory
Yep.
who can actually, basically, we have jars, jarred up all of the projects he doesn't need.
Yep.
So he's actually just getting the jars linked in. I can open he opens the full monorepo and he closes most of the projects.
Yep.
Just to see the ones he cares about.
Yep. The other part that I'll say, once I get to that scale, this is my fear. A lot of times when we lean into these microservices or modules, right? Maybe they're not even separately deployable. It's just a different jar file that you're generating. One of the problems that I've seen is this microservice sprawl, where we end up having a microservice for every single domain object that we take. Yep. So by having it in the one project, I also can keep my eyes on that, right? And having those rules in place, that architecture rules, I can put a number, I can put rules around how many of those services I have per package layer, right? Per level, per feature. I can do those kind of things. So yeah.
But region arching it so it doesn't
Yep.
work.
Yes.
Next,
Yeah.
next question was, I'm seeing an attempt to make the Java 9 modules useful. Do they use Java 9 modules, or is it's an absolute disaster, and it shouldn't be, and we just can't do it? Everyone agree?
Never used it.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen it, never successful.
Never successful, I mean, there's too much work,
Yeah.
it's too little reward, and you spend all of your time doing maintenance, then it doubles your work because you've got to do the same thing in maintenance.
Yep.
So I'm glad to see something in Modulith that, you've got your, you're doing your visibilities with the Spring Modulith.
This is another piece. This is my default change, right? To switch from this package by layer to package by feature is don't make everything public. Take off that public visibility, take it off from everything, and then look at your code. Why do you need it to be public? If you can just have everything, but with a default visibility, package visibility, yeah, you're going to start to see how easy it is to change your mindset.
I've got several tens of thousands of classes built with public everything,
Yep.
and Eclipse just can't come. So I do know having to make everything move all back to private.
Any other questions